So a few things to keep in mind now that you're going to start to get into doing a little bit more programming with this. Some common errors that you just might run into. So we can't have duplicate events. So on Friday, we looked at the screen initialize event to do something when the app loads. So if we pulled out another screen initialize event, that's going to cause an error. And it's not just a little error. Red errors are really bad errors. The kind of errors that would cause your program to not even be able to run and test. Right? Since these are the exact same thing, screen one initialize, it wouldn't know which one to do, and it would not combine them together. So if you happen to repeat something in there, that's going to flag it as a major error. So in this case, since we have a duplicate, you could throw that bottom one in the trash can. Another example here with a button click. Since we already have a button one click event, which would happen when the button is clicked, and then we dragged out a second button one click event, we get an error. App Inventor does a lot of things for you to help you prevent errors, but it won't do something like this to prevent it. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're working and you see little red flags on there. Those are pretty bad things, even causing the app to not run at all. So then you'll want to investigate what might be going on with that. You can always click on the little red error message, and it pops up a message. They're pretty cryptic, to tell you the truth. They're not very user-friendly error messages. So you can look at them. They might, you might be able to start to interpret something from the error messages, but it's not going to say, hey, you already have a button one click event. It's not going to be that nice and concise for you. Another common error is to have incomplete jigsaw slots. So in this one, all right, we've got an incomplete slot up in the top. This error is a warning. So we've got in the yellow are warning messages, meaning the warning is, hey, this may not work exactly how you intended it to because there's some things that are not completed yet, but the app will probably still work, but maybe just not the way you intended it to. So if you have warning signs, you could have incomplete key pieces of code in some places, and sometimes you don't have to worry about them. Other times they do. If they're incomplete inside an event, that could be a problem. But if this block was outside of an event, it would never run, so it wouldn't be an issue. Your workspace. Workspace, if you are in App Inventor, you right-click on a blank area in your code blocks on that workspace. You get this menu that pops up, and lots of things we can do from here that are helpful. One is download blocks as image. Right? As you start getting all of these blocks in there, and you want to keep a copy, like a physical graphic image of it, you can download it. You just right-click, and it downloads an image file to your computer. Although I've had trouble with this working on Mac. So Windows haven't had any problems, but right-clicking and choosing download blocks as image on the Mac, it just didn't do anything. So I've had a couple other people with Macs that have run into the same thing. So other things to do here, expand and collapsing blocks. I showed you another example on Friday where we had an app that had lots of blocks all over the place. And sometimes it can be a little distracting to have your blocks all over and taking up a lot of room. So if you right-click and choose Collapse Blocks, then it takes them and collapses them down into these little snippets here. It doesn't remove any of the code block. It just collapses it down into a smaller tab. And then you could go in and expand just the blocks that you wanted to work with. So you can expand them, collapse them as you're working as a group. You can also right-click on a block and choose to collapse it, and it would just collapse that one block. And then you can expand just one block at a time the same way. Disabling blocks, very useful tool. If you have a block, remember the trash can, once it goes into the trash can, it's gone. You can't get it back. There's no undo in App Inventor. So if you've spent a lot of time developing, a pretty complex block of code, and you think maybe it's having an effect on your app running, it's not working the right way. And instead of deleting the block, we can just disable it. So if you right-click on a block, just like the outside block of an edge, you right-click on it and you can choose Disable Block. So then it turns into this ghosted image here, so you can easily see that this is not being used in your app when you're testing it. So instead of putting something into the backpack to save for or use somewhere else, and you just want to disable the code, I would just put it here, disable it, not put it in the trash can yet because I'm not 100% sure that I don't need it, but I don't want to recreate it again. So disabling, and then when you want to use it again, you just right-click on it and enable it. So you can make it available and disable as you need to. Very useful in debugging when you find out something's not working right and you kind of think that might be the problem. You could disable that block and try running it, and yeah, it runs good. And then you put it back in, enable it, and you run it, and that's where it starts to crash. So now you've isolated where one of your problems is. So you can keep that in there without deleting your blocks and losing them forever. Comments, right? Documenting your code is something all professional developers and programmers do. And you can add comments in App Inventor to your code blocks. You just right-click on the block and say Add Comment. And then you get a little bubble where you can type in what your comment is. A lot of times they're used to clarify your thinking. Like you know that you have, you want your rabbit to do something when it reaches the edge. So maybe you haven't done all of these blocks yet. So you could put a comment in here about what you want to have happen when the rabbit reaches the edge. And then that can help you to drive what blocks you're going to add in there. Also to help you remember how the program works. You'd be surprised. You think, I'll remember how this works forever. And then you go on and you work in another program and you go back to it 6 months later and you're like, what was I thinking when I made this block of code? What is this supposed to do? Some of the blocks of code can get pretty lengthy, very long. So if you have a little comment in there for yourself describing what it does, then you don't have to read through all the blocks and say, oh, okay, it turns this timer off, and it stops this, and it does that. You could just leave it in a little comment and be able to get to it very quickly. And also helps others. So if you're team building on something, other people will have, the other teammates will kind of know what you were thinking about or what you were trying to do. When you submit code to me, you can put in there comments about what you were trying to do or how you solved something, or if you were really proud of what you built in there, because I will look at the comments that you submit. This is a screenshot out of the textbook, but the comment I had on the other one was for the whole block, but you can go into every individual block and put a comment in there. All depends on, how much and how detailed you want to get into your comments about some code. This is kind of overkill, I think, but just description about what everything is and what it does. Might help you when you're first learning to put blocks, descriptions in there so that you can read through it and understand the purpose of your different blocks. Saving projects. So when you created a new project, it automatically saves as you work. Now on the menu, when you go into projects, there is a save project option. And I think they put that in there just because people felt like they were compelled to try to save it. Like, I have to save. You have to give them a save option. I need to be able to save my file. But if you don't do that, there's nothing that is bad that happens. It automatically saves as you work. Now there's a save project as feature, which is just like the save as in other programs that you've used where you want to make a copy of it. So you might say, this is my game version 1. And then you could do a save as my game version 2. So that you don't lose what you've built for the first version, but then you could continue adding on to it without worrying about losing your previous work. So that's a good way to work. There's also checkpoints. You can create a checkpoint, and that could be also, it's instead of doing save as and save as and save as, you could have checkpoints about different parts of your app as you build it. This is the part, this is the user interface. So you create a checkpoint for the user interface. Maybe you go in and you get the little characters to move around and bounce around on the screen. So then that checkpoint is, the animation part. And then the next part you build is the score keeping. So you could have a checkpoint for keeping score. So either technique will work. It just is a matter of what you feel comfortable with. So save as has different files that you'll see in your project list. Checkpoint will just be one file, but different points in there where you can go back to and work for where your code was at that checkpoint. So that's your version control. Exporting a project. When you have two major project building assignments that you do this semester, and you will have to send me your project files. And in order to do that in App Inventor, and I do have these instructions in the assignment again, so if you don't remember it right from now, it'll be in the assignment. But you can export your AIA file, so you can get it off of App Inventor and then attach it in with an assignment that you submit. Or you're working on a project and you're stuck and you want to send it to me for some feedback. Can you take a look at this? This is what I'm having trouble with. So you can send me your AIA file and I can open it up in App Inventor and look at it and give you some feedback and some pointers on where to go. Because I don't have access to your App Inventor accounts, so I can't just log in and go in and look and see what you're doing. So you have to be able to send me your files for me to view. When you select export it, it's going to download it to wherever your files are downloaded on your computer. Now, there's always a bit of confusion of what happens when you do that. When you download it to your computer, a large majority of people click on that AIA file, right? So if this was Hello World and you downloaded the Hello World AIA file, right? I come in here and I go to Project, Export Selected Project to my computer. So now it downloaded it to the Downloads folder in here. So if I click on it down here, I get this message. Now this is Windows. Mac will have a similar message. It says Windows can't open this file. It says Hello World AIA. AIA files will only work in App Inventor, and App Inventor is your cloud platform. So once you download the AIA file from the cloud to your computer, the AIA file won't work. It has to be in App Inventor. So when you submit your projects to me for grading and I get your AIA file, I have to take your AIA file, upload it to App Inventor, and review it and look at your code and test it. So just downloading it and clicking on the AIA file probably won't do anything on your computer. Now there's an extension of AIA for Photoshop. So if you have Photoshop on your computer, it might say, do you want to open this up in Photoshop? But it's not a Photoshop project file. So even if you say yes, it won't do anything in Photoshop. So they have to be up, it has to be up in App Inventor to work. And I just kind of like to go over that because that confuses people, because if you downloaded a Word document, a docx file, then you'd have to have Word to open it up and read it in. Or if you download a PowerPoint file, you have to have PowerPoint to read it in. Well, AIA files have to be in App Inventor, and App Inventor is only in the cloud. So that's the deal behind AIA files.